What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So today I want to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day and how it made very serious mistakes when it comes to its villain, and how other films and franchises did not make that kind of mistake when it came to their villains, and specifically how the franchise Pirates of the Caribbean did not make that mistake in regards to its villain. Okay, Pirates of the Caribbean understood things about how to handle its villain and what its villain meant and how the audience should interpret that villain. It understood things about that which Spider-Man Brand New Day clearly did not understand about its villain. Okay? Now, heads up, this is a spoiler video. If you haven't seen Spider-Man, I will be in detail spoiling stuff that happens in the film, stuff that happens at the end of the film, who the villain is, what happens with the villain. All of that is going to be spoiled. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to hear that stuff yet, now's your chance to check out. Get the fuck out of here, go watch the movie, come back ideally. But if you have seen it or you just don't care you don't care if you hear the spoilers, stay in, stay tuned, stay in here. And this is your warning. Here on out, it's spoiler time. What happens in this movie? It is revealed that Jean Grey is the villain. And that's not shocking to a lot of people because people were speculating ahead of time that Sadie Sink was Jean Grey and that she might in some way be like an antagonist to Spider-Man. I think a lot of people assume someone else would be like the villain. And you can argue like, well, the real villain is Damage Control, and sure. But like the actual person that Peter spends most of the film at odds with and trying to combat is Jean Grey. And what's problematic about this is that Jean Grey does atrociously evil things. And they are evil things which are not excused by her background and by the shit she's dealing with. Okay? Because in this movie, Jean Grey, her mother abandoned her and her sister as children because she learned they were mutants. And then Jean Grey's sister, Sarah, is abducted by this shadow organization called Damage Control. And Jean Grey, throughout most of the movie, is trying to rescue her because she believes she is imprisoned. And later on, she learns that her sister's just actually been dead this whole time. And so it transitions from, like, I need to rescue her to I need to exact vengeful wrath on the people that killed her. But in any case, that's her motivation throughout. And in service of that motivation, she does horrible, evil things. And those things include killing like several innocent people, right? In the form of blowing up buildings, in the form of possessing a person and having them walk backwards into traffic to be killed by a car. Like, she does a lot of shit in this movie. And beyond that, she does horrible stuff to Spider-Man. The ways in which she manipulates him and uses MJ and targets MJ and just everything about how she handles that is so vitriolically evil that, again, it cannot be excused by her background. Yes, she's young. I get that. She's not as mature yet. Yes, she has a traumatic upbringing. Yes, her sister was abducted, and yes, she's trying to rescue her sister. None of that is enough to excuse what she does. Okay, and what's a shame about that is they could have done it a little differently. They could have had her only kill people from Damage Control. If at the end, when she shows up at like Damage Control headquarters and is like killing guards and stuff, like, if that's kind of the extent of what she did, I'd be okay with that. Like, yes, that might not be, like, heroic in some sense. That might violate the norm that superheroes in Western media, like, more often than not, don't kill people. And yes, that might be motivated by personal things / revenge rather than, just saving the day or something. But that would be very understandable. And that'd be very reasonable, I think, for a character to do that in that situation, for a person to do that in that situation. Like, if that's all she did, and if maybe she, yes, had this antagonism with Spider-Man because he's like constantly getting in her way, and yes, if she maybe got a little ugly with how she handled that, if that was it, if that's all that happened, you could excuse it. And you could say like, okay, look, she's young, she's got, yes, this trauma, this motivation. Spider-Man kind of gets her on the right path, and I do like how they handle that. I like the idea of Jean Grey and Spider-Man sharing many things in common, being outsiders, having special gifts, having lost people very near and dear to them, having very hard lives, although the Spider-Man's life is far too easy, frankly. But nevertheless, if they had all those things in common, but the big difference maker was that he had Aunt May to be this positive influence on him, And if he's able to share that with Jean Grey through that psychic connection during that scene where she goes into his mind and has that memory of Aunt May encouraging him, the idea that like by psychically kind of sharing that with her, that he could put her on the right path the way that he was put on the right path, I like that idea on its own. And yes, that could have happened if Jean Grey wasn't like an evil fucking monster doing bad shit the whole movie. You know, if she instead just did the stuff I said, like maybe kill some damage control guards and, yeah, get a little rough with Spider-Man because he won't get out of the fucking way and let her go save her sister. Sure. Like, you know, and even there you'd have to table the, like, you know, at no point does she just explain to him what's happening. You know, at no point does she just say, like, look, like, damage control has abducted my sister because she has powers. I'm trying to rescue my sister. Stop getting in the fucking way while I try to rescue my sister. She never at one point explains that to him. And even there, he'd still have motive to stop her because, again, the shit he's stopping her from doing is getting normal people, innocent people, people unrelated to any of this killed. Like a fucking villain. Okay? So that was all terribly done. That has kind of ruined Jean Grey. That has made Jean Grey a villain. That has made Jean Grey someone who doesn't belong in the fucking X-Men. That has made Jean Grey someone who certainly shouldn't be leading the X-Men. Because in the comics, she has always had a leadership role of sorts, and it sounds like Marvel, you know, predictably wants to just shaft Cyclops again and have her more central and have her be the actual leader of the X-Men going forward. That's the rumors anyway. And yes, the way they've handled her in Brand New Day is such that she in no way deserves that and in no way is appropriate for that role. She should not be leading the X-Men because she's a fucking villain. And that's a shame. You know, I'm not happy they went this way, and they could have pretty easily avoided going this way. But, you know, to put it in perspective, when I was watching the movie, like many people had guessed that Sadie Sink was going to be Jean Grey and that Jean Grey was going to be an antagonist of some kind to Spider-Man. I think from what I saw, most people didn't think she would be the actual like main villain of the movie. And you could argue like, oh, damage control is the real villain. Yeah, whatever. But she's the one who Spider-Man's actually fighting most of the movie. And some people were speculating whether or not that would happen. And as I was watching it, as I watched this shit unfold, especially again, her just possessing someone and having them like walk into traffic, as I was watching that, I said to myself, oh, well, I guess Jean Grey is not the villain. Yeah, I thought she might be. I thought this might all be Jean Grey. But surely this isn't Jean Grey, because Jean Grey would never fucking do this. That was my thought. That's what I said to myself just as the movie was unfolding. And then lo and behold, they reveal it's Jean Grey. And I was like, what the fuck are these guys thinking? Idiots. This is such a fumble. An unnecessary, an unforced error, as it's called, is what this is for Marvel. And this is not something that every other franchise does. Let's say every franchise has done this right, but there are franchises that have gotten it right. And chiefly, I'm thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean, okay? Because, or before I get into that, let me unpack like where some people might be defending this, might be defending Jean Grey. There is this spin put on it where it's like, yes, I have a motive. I've been traumatized. You know, I've gone through hard things. Ergo, this terrible shit I do isn't my fault, or it's okay, it's excusable, or it's justified. Some iteration of that is what the movie clearly wants you to think. And oh well, you know, I'm kind of in a better place now that I had my powwow with Spider-Man, so it's okay, right? Like that's sort of the clear message of the film, and that's no doubt how some people are interpreting this movie. And it's very similar to the WandaVision situation, where Wanda has gone through some shit. She's lost people, you know, she's lost Vision, and she's like, oh, well, I will just possess a whole fucking town and make them do what I want and pretend that he's still here. And then we're going to frame it, we being Disney, we're going to frame all this as if I'm just sort of the misunderstood character and not really a bad person. And the government people trying to stop me and rescue this town, they're actually the bad guys because they're white dudes with guns or whatever. And yes, we're going to have this inane moment at the end where I've relinquished this control over this town I've been torturing, and where what's her name from the Marvels Captain Rambo or whoever, she's gonna say, like, they'll never know what you gave up for them. That nonsense. Where again, it's trying to whitewash what she's done and pretend she's not a goddamn villain. Ridiculous. And this does something very similar with Jean Grey. Okay, now. Part of the point here is that just because you can understand why a villain does something, just because there's something human about why they do something, does not mean that they're not a villain. And it doesn't mean what they did is justified or excusable. Okay, you can understand it. It can be very human, but that doesn't make it right. Okay, and why I bring up Pirates of the Caribbean is that they understood this very well with Davy Jones. Okay, because if you don't recall, Davy Jones is like kind of the main villain of that trilogy overall. There's several villains, but he's kind of the biggest one. And he does terrible shit to people, and his motivation is that his heart was broken and it sent him on a bad path. And he is like a sad, brooding character because of it. And it's understandable, it's human. Like if you've ever had your heart broken or lost someone, you can understand how people go to these dark places. You kind of get it. The same way you can get how addiction could turn a person into Gollum from the Lord of the Rings, but that doesn't excuse what's happening. Okay, it doesn't justify or just make it easy to dismiss the evil deeds of Davy Jones. It does, at a certain level, it doesn't matter that his heart was broken. He's still doing terrible shit that's inexcusable, right? And to be blunt, if you've just lived life, okay, and some of you might be too young to have experienced this stuff, and some of you, maybe young and still have experienced this stuff, but if you live long enough, life is gonna do that shit. People are gonna wrong you, people are gonna betray you, you're gonna lose people. Life is going to do unfair shit. You're going to be traumatized. That's the human condition. Okay? There's a reason why in The Dark Knight Rises, there's dialogue between Bruce and Alfred where Bruce is just refusing to move the fuck on because his girlfriend died 10 years ago. And Alfred's like, dude, you got to move the fuck on. And he's like, I had someone though, Alfred. And Alfred says to him, and you lost them. Or he's like, I had people in my life, is what he said, because he's kind of referring to his parents and to his girlfriend. And Alfred says to him, but you lost them. But that's just a part of living. That's all a part of living. But what you're doing isn't living. You're just waiting, hoping for things to go bad again. And Alfred is right, okay? It's I remember seeing that when I was younger. When I was, 19 or whatever, or 18 when that movie came out. I remember seeing that scene and even thinking to myself, Alfred's being kind of harsh, dude. Bruce has gone through some shit. But now that I'm older, now that life has given me a few licks myself, Alfred's right. There's a time for grieving, and certain things you never fully get over. They stay with you, but you got to live your life. You got to move on. And likewise, bad shit might happen to you. Unfair shit might happen to you. Bad shit might happen to people you care about. But that doesn't give you an excuse to go and hurt the world, to go and take it out on innocent people. People have nothing to fucking do with that shit. It doesn't excuse it. And you get that with Davy Jones. You can see why someone who's truly had their heart ripped out, which he did both metaphorically and literally, you can see why that would put you in a dark place, why it'd put you on a dark path. It's very human, right? But it doesn't excuse the shit he gets up to. And likewise, if you've been abandoned by your mother, if you have a sister you're close to and someone hurts her or takes her away or whatever, I can see why you would become a villain. I get it. It's a very believable reason to become a villain, but it doesn't excuse it. Okay? And this movie clearly does not get that. And some huge amount of fans and the viewers clearly do not get that. So it's unfortunate because, yes, if you haven't seen my actual review of the movie, I have an hour-long review on this channel where, the first part spoiler-free and then the latter portion has the spoilers, and I go into detail on all this. But, that movie kind of ruined Jean Grey, and by extension is probably going to ruin the X-Men because this psycho is going to be running the X-Men, apparently. And even if she's not actually running the X-Men and she doesn't fully fill in that role that Cyclops is supposed to kind of fill, she's still gonna be one of the more prominent people in the X-Men. And it's like, yeah, why the fuck is she here? Like, how can any of us like root for this person? You know, because she is just a villain. And she's a villain in this way that like the movie and the franchise is trying to like sweep under the rug and treat you like an imbecile, you know, and disrespect your intelligence and your moral fortitude by telling you this is all fine and not happening. So, you know, it's a shame. That's that, and the way they just retconned all of the shit that happened in No Way Home, barring resurrecting Aunt May or something. But the way at which the Brand New Day just ends with Peter in this totally great place again, that and the way they handled Jean Grey caused me to not like that movie, which is a shame because I was hoping I would like it. I was optimistic I was going to like it, and there's a lot of things I did like about it, as far as how it was made and how they handled the action scenes and how they handled the Hulk and the Punisher and whatnot. There's a lot of stuff I liked about the movie, but the two main fumbles, it's just undoing the entire point of what they did in No Way Home, and then even worse yet, like character assassinating Jean Grey and trying to like trick the audience into like rooting for a fucking villain and being okay with a villain like helming the fucking X-Men. Yeah, they ruined it. They kind of ruined Spider-Man and X-Men in one movie, you know? And again, in a way they totally didn't have to, and what is utterly and completely an unforced error on their part. So it's a shame. It's ridiculous. I you know, as a fan of Marvel, as a fan of the X-Men, as a fan of Jean Grey, as a fan of Spider-Man, it pisses me off. You know, it's hard. It makes you want to pull your hair out. But, you know, I guess not everyone gets it. But if you needed to hear this, hopefully it got through to you, because yes, the stuff she does is evil. The stuff she does is not excused by the fact that she's trying to rescue her sister, or the fact that she's young, or the fact that she's been traumatized. It does not excuse that. And her little powwow with Peter does not excuse that or redeem her. Not fully. You know, not enough. You know, not enough to make her a hero. Not enough to make her, someone who should like run the fucking X-Men. Not enough to make her Jean Grey. Okay, this is just not Jean Grey. And it's a shame. It's a shame. So, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean got it right. You know, Davy Jones, he might not have had as good of reasons as did Jean Grey, but he had his reasons. But it didn't excuse what he did. It didn't make him not a villain. And the movie didn't try to trick you into thinking he wasn't a villain. Okay? You know, they did right by his character. They depicted his experience. They depicted what he was going through and how he felt and what his motive was. They were honest in how they depicted him, but that honesty included not forgiving his evils and not trying to like retcon his evils as like, oh, you know, he was just in a bad place. You know, it's like, yeah, so what? Again, if you've lived life, you've been in a goddamn bad place before. But hopefully you didn't go out and just like brutalize people and kill people and do insane evil shit because of it. You know, and you can understand that. Like, if you've ever read Batman: War on Crime, it's my favorite Batman comic. So it isn't really a spoiler. It's just like a line he has in the comic book. But it's written by Paul Dini, and the artwork is by Alex Ross, and it's just terrific. But there's a scene where Bruce is reflecting to himself, and he's saying, "Look, I went through this terrible thing where my parents were killed in front of me, and I had all this anger and all this trauma and blah, 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 blah. And I was able to channel that into something good. I was able to become a hero because of that." He goes, "However, if I didn't have the advantages I do, if I weren't like a rich guy, you know, if I didn't have those resources, if I didn't have Alfred, would I have become a hero? Would I even have become a good person? Or would I have become a bad person? Would I have turned that anger on the world rather than channeled it into, you know, kind of trying to stop people from doing the thing that happened to me again? Would that have happened? Very possibly so. Maybe likely so. And he's sort of empathizing with actual criminals who he fights. But it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't say like, yeah, so if you are Batman and you just go and become a murderer, you know, no big deal. right? You were in a bad place. Something bad happened to you when you were a kid. No. No. Yeah, you can understand it. Like, you can understand why someone like that became like that, but it doesn't excuse it. Okay? That's all I got on that. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Like if you have not. Subscribe if you have not. Check out my other YouTube channel if you have not. This is actually my second YouTube channel. My first one is an MMA channel. I used to be an MMA fighter. I have been watching MMA since like 2005. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I've got a lot of things to say about MMA. So if you're interested in MMA, if you like watching the UFC, check out that channel. I'll link it down in the description box again. But if not, no worries. Stick around here for your nerd stuff. But in any case, take care.